Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be presenting Frank Smith's book, Unspeakable Acts, Unnatural Practices, Flaws and Fallacies of Scientific Reading Instruction. This session is designed for my fellow elementary school teachers and reading specialist colleagues. Our goal is to explore Smith's critique of rigid reading instruction and discuss strategies we can use in our classrooms to foster meaningful literacy experiences. To begin, it's important to understand the overall purpose of Smith's book and the perspective he brings to the conversation about reading instruction. The purpose of Unspeakable Acts, Unnatural Practices is critically examine what Smith refers to as scientific reading instruction. He challenges the idea that reading can be effectively taught through rigid, standardized methods that focus primarily on isolated skills. Instead, he argues that these approaches often oversimplify the reading process and fail to reflect how children naturally learn language. One of Smith's central critiques is the overemphasis on phonics and decoding as isolated skills. While he acknowledges that these skills have a role, he argues that when they are taught out of context through drills, worksheets, or scripted programs, they can actually interfere with comprehensions. Students may become focused on getting the words right rather than understanding the meaning of the text. As educators, we've likely seen this in students who can read aloud accurately but struggle to explain what they've just read. Smith also critiques how scientific reading instruction often ignores students' prior knowledge and language experiences. He emphasizes that children come to school already equipped with a strong foundation in oral language and meaning making. When instruction does not build on this foundation, it can feel disconnected and less effective for learners. Another important part of his critique is that these rigid approaches can reduce reading to a mechanical task rather than a meaningful, purposeful activity. When students view reading as simply decoding words, they may lose interest and motivation. This is particularly concerning for us as elementary school teachers and reading specialists, because engagement is such a key factor in literary development. In contrast, Smith highlights the importance of meaningful reading experiences. He argues that reading should be connected to real life contexts, student interests, and authentic purposes. When students engage with texts that matter to them, they are more likely to make connections, ask questions, and think critically about what they're reading. Meaningful reading also encourages interaction and collaboration. Whether through discussion, shared reading, or guided groups, students benefit from talking about texts and hearing different perspectives. These experiences not only support comprehension, but also help students see reading as a valuable and enjoyable activity. For us as educators, this overview sets the stage for reflecting on our own practices. It challenges us to consider whether our instruction is primarily skill driven or whether it also fosters meaning, engagement, and authentic literacy. Smith's message is not to eliminate skill instruction, but to ensure it is always embedded within meaningful, purposeful reading. This slide highlights the key themes of Smith's work, which are especially important for us as elementary teachers and reading specialists to reflect on in our daily practice. First, Smith emphasizes that reading is a social and interactive process. He argues that children do not learn to read in isolation through drills, but rather through meaningful interactions with texts, with teachers, and peers. This means that discussion, collaboration, and shared reading experiences are essential components of effective literacy instruction. When students talk about what they read, they deepen their understanding and make connections that go beyond just decoding the words. Second, Smith offers a strong critique of decontextualized phonics instruction. While he does not dismiss phonics entirely, he challenges the idea that reading can be reduced to a sequence of isolated skills taught out of context. He argues that when phonics is taught without meaning, students may be able to decode words but still struggle to understand or engage with the text. This is something we often see in our classrooms when we have students who can sound out words but can't explain what they've read to us. Another key theme is the importance of authentic literature and meaningful experiences. Smith believes that students learn to read best when they are exposed to real texts that are interesting, relevant, and purposeful. This includes stories, informational texts, and materials that connect to their lives and experiences. As educators, this challenges us to think carefully about the texts we choose and how we present them to students. Finally, Smith emphasizes that learning to read is intertwined with learning about the world. Reading's not just a technical skill, it is a way of making sense of ideas, experiences, and information. When we provide students with opportunities to explore meaningful content through reading, we're not only teaching literacy skills, but also supporting their overall cognitive and social development. As we reflect on these themes, it's important to consider our own instruction. Are we creating opportunities for interaction and meaning making, or are we focusing primarily on isolated skills? Smith's work encourages us to find a balance that supports both skill development and deep understanding. Smith's critiques of rigid scientific reading instruction align closely with current research in literacy education. While phonics instruction is necessary, studies consistently show that isolated skill drills do not foster strong comprehension or engagement. The National Reading Panel, published in 2000, emphasizes a balanced approach, combining phonics with opportunities for meaningful reading experiences. Graham and Hebert, 2010, highlight the value of integrating writing with reading to enhance comprehension, while Fontes and Pinnell, in 2017, emphasize guided reading and authentic texts as essential for language development and motivation. For us as elementary teachers and reading specialists, this means that while we provide explicit instruction and skills like decoding, we must also ensure students are interacting with texts in meaningful ways through discussion, exploration, and writing to build comprehension, engagement, and a love for reading. To help visualize the differences Smith highlights between scientific reading and instruction and meaningful reading instruction, I created this graphic organizer. On the left, you see the features of traditional, rigid approaches. These tend to focus primarily on decoding and isolated phonics skills, often with scripted lessons and frequent testing. Student engagement can be low because these methods don't connect reading to real life contexts, or the interests of the learners. While accuracy in decoding may improve, comprehension and critical thinking often suffer. On the right, we see the characteristics of meaningful reading instruction, which Smith advocates for. Here, the focus expands beyond decoding to comprehension, interaction, and meaningful communication. Students are actively engaged through discussion, collaboration, and authentic literature. Skills such as vocabulary, comprehension, and critical thinking are emphasized along motivation, creating readers who not only decode but understand and enjoy what they read. As educators, this organizer can serve as a reflective tool. When planning instruction, consider, are your lessons leaning more toward the left, or are they incorporating the right hand approach? How can you adapt activities to increase engagement, comprehension, and authentic interaction with text? This simple comparison can guide us toward more balanced, meaningful literacy instruction. Now that we've explored Smith's key ideas, I'd like to shift us into a practical application that you can take directly into your classrooms. This strategy is called literature discussion circles, and it aligns closely with Smith's emphasis on reading as a social, meaningful, and interactive process. In this approach, students engage with a shared text. This could be a short story, a picture book, or even a section of a longer text. And then they participate in small group discussions. Each student has the opportunity to share their thinking, ask questions, and respond to others. This creates a space where reading becomes more than decoding. It becomes meaning making and about connections. To implement this strategy, you might begin by selecting a text that is both accessible and engaging for your students. Then, provide a few guiding prompts. These could focus on comprehension, connections, or even student opinions. Students can discuss in small groups, jot down key ideas, and then share out with the whole class. As the teacher or reading specialist, your role is to facilitate, guide, and support deeper thinking rather than direct every part of the conversation. What's powerful about this strategy is that it naturally integrates many of the elements Smith values: authentic text, social interaction, and meaningful engagement. It also allows you to differentiate instruction, as you can group students based on need, provide scaffolds, or adjust prompts to support different learners. At this point, I'd like for you to pause and reflect with your colleagues. You can talk to your colleagues for 3 to 5 minutes, whatever is necessary, to discuss how could you implement literature discussion circles in your classroom or intervention setting. What types of texts would work best for your students? What supports or scaffolds might your students need to be successful? If you're a reading specialist, consider how this strategy could be adapted for small group intervention or targeted support. Welcome back. Hopefully, that gave you some time to think through how this strategy could look in your own context or in your own classroom. As you move forward, consider starting small, perhaps with a short text and a few simple prompts, and gradually building students' discussion skills over time. With consistency, this approach can significantly increase both engagement and comprehension in your classroom. At this point in the presentation, I'd like for us to shift into deeper reflection. These discussion prompts are designed to help us, as elementary teachers and reading specialists, think critically about our own instructional practices in light of Smith's ideas. The first question asks, how do your current reading practices reflect or challenge Smith's critiques? This is an opportunity to honestly examine our instruction. Many of us use structured programs or phonics-based approaches, and those can be valuable, but where do they align with meaningful reading, and where might they fall short? The second prompt is, can phonics and comprehension be balanced effectively in your classroom? This is really at the heart of the conversation. Smith pushes back against over-reliance on isolated skills, but current research reminds us that phonics does play a role. So the question becomes, how do we intentionally balance both in a way that supports all learners? Next, consider, how can meaningful reading experiences increase student engagement? Think about your own students. When are they the most engaged? Is it during worksheets and drills? Or during discussion, storytelling, and authentic reading tasks? This question encourages us to reflect on what truly motivates our learners. Finally, can you share a classroom example where interactive reading improved student understanding? This is a chance to connect theory to practice, whether it's a guided reading group, a read aloud discussion, or a collaborative activity. These real examples help us learn from one another. Now, I would like you to take some time to discuss these prompts with your colleagues. Pause the video here and take about 5 to 7 minutes to discuss the following questions together. As you talk, try to share specific examples from your own classrooms or intervention settings. Where do you see your current practices aligning with or differing from Smith's ideas? What challenges do you face when trying to balance phonics and comprehension? What strategies have you used that successfully increase student engagement? If you're working with reading intervention groups, consider how these ideas apply in a more targeted small group setting as well. Welcome back. These kinds of professional conversations are so valuable because they allow us to reflect, share ideas, and refine our practice. As you continue thinking about these prompts, consider one small change you could make in your instruction to better support meaningful, engaging reading experiences for your students. As we move toward the conclusion of the book study, it's important to consider what Smith's ideas mean for us as educators, especially as elementary teachers and reading specialists working directly with developing readers. One of the first implications is the need to rethink rigid or overly scripted phonics programs. While these programs can provide structure and support, Smith challenges us to consider whether they are meeting the full range of our students' needs. Are students simply learning to decode, or are they truly understanding and engaging with what they read? This doesn't mean abandoning phonics instruction, but rather being thoughtful about how and when we use it and ensuring it is always connected to meaning. Another key implication is the importance of prioritizing authentic reading experiences. This means giving students regular opportunities to engage with real texts, stories, informational books, and materials that are relevant to their lives. When students see reading as purposeful and connected to their interests, they are more likely to be motivated and invested in the learning process. Smith's work also highlights the need to balance skills instruction with comprehension and discussion. In practice, this might look like integrating phonics into shared reading, guided reading, or writing activities, rather than teaching it in isolation. It also means creating space for students to talk about what they read, ask questions, and make connections because these interactions deepen understanding and support long term literacy development. Another important takeaway is the value of professional reflection and collaboration. As educators, we benefit from ongoing conversations about our instructional practices. Whether through grade level teams, professional learning communities, or discussions like this one, sharing ideas and reflecting together can help us refine our approach and better support our students. Finally, Smith's message encourages us to think about the overall experience of reading in our classrooms. Are we fostering a love of reading, curiosity, and confidence? Or are students viewing reading as a task to complete? Our goal is to develop not just proficient readers, but engaged, thoughtful learners who see reading as meaningful and worthwhile. As you reflect on these implications, consider one small actionable change you could make in your instruction. It might be incorporating more discussion, selecting more engaging texts, or adjusting how you teach a particular skill. Even small shifts can have a significant impact on student engagement and comprehension over time. These references provide the research foundation for this presentation and can guide further reading for professional development. As we come to the end of this book study, I'd like to leave you with a few final thoughts and a call to action as we reflect on our roles as educators. Frank Smith's work challenges us to think deeply about how we teach reading, not just what we teach, but how and why we teach it. He reminds us that reading is not simply a set of isolated skills to be mastered, but a meaningful, social, and purposeful process. As elementary teachers and reading specialists, we have the opportunity to shape how our students experience reading every single day. So, the first call to action is to reflect on your current reading instruction practices. Take a moment to consider: are your students primarily engaged in skill based tasks? Or are they also experiencing meaningful, authentic reading opportunities? Where might there be room for more discussion, collaboration, or connection to real world texts? Second, I encourage you to try implementing or expanding strategies like literature discussion circles or other interactive approaches. Even starting small, such as incorporating one meaningful discussion into your week, can begin to shift how students engage with text. Over time, these small changes can lead to deeper comprehension, increased motivation, and a stronger sense of confidence in reading. Another important step is to continue these conversations with your colleagues. Professional dialogue is a powerful tool for growth, whether it's in a formal professional learning community or informal conversations with teammates. Sharing ideas and reflecting together can help us refine our practices and better meet the needs of our students. Finally, I encourage you to keep the bigger picture in mind. Our goal is not just to teach students how to read, but to help them become lifelong readers who think critically, make connections, and find joy in reading. When we prioritize meaningful literacy experiences alongside skill development, we are supporting not only academic success, but a love of learning. Thank you for your time and participation in this book study. I hope this session has provided you with new insights, practical strategies and inspiration to reflect on and enhance your literacy instruction.